Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this video lesson on Absolutism and the Big Five. We are in part 2 of 4 video lessons. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank, and I will be your guide on this journey. All right, so just a review so we remember what absolutism is. It's the exercise of complete and unrestricted power of a government by a monarch whose power comes directly from God, okay? Perfect example of this is Louis XIV. All right, so the official range, 1550 to 1800. You're going to want to focus your time, your study time, which is very valuable and limited, 1650 to 1789. Those are the power years. That's the prime time. That's what you want to hit. For the AP exam, you should know the official range. Like, you should be able to, what is the range of absolutism? It is 1550 to 1800. But in terms of studying and actual factual knowledge, focus your attention 1650 to 1789. These are the 5 big guns. Pardon me. These are the 5 big guns you're going to want to focus on. So we already talked about England. We talked about them in the previous video lesson. And in this video lesson, we're going to have a special focus on France. So here we go. France. All right. So let me move my little recorder here up at the top. All right. So 6 degrees of separation. I use this as a title just to show you how actually connected Europe was during this time. So there's European connections between France, the Holy Roman Empire, and Spain. All right. So Henry IV married Catherine de' Medici, right? And then King Philip of Spain married Margaret of Austria. Okay, so you start to see the connections. And they produced Anne of Austria. Now, Louis XIII marries Anne of Austria, who then produces Louis XIV, who is married to Marie Therese of Spain, who was cousin to Charles II of England. Just pause for a minute and like process that, right? Talk about incestual relations. Like Europe, it was ridiculous. Okay, so Henry IV, he's the founder of the Bourbon dynasty. You need to remember Henry IV, because the Bourbon dynasty is going to go all the way through several different eras of European history. Okay, so you're going to really want to pay attention to that. Founder of the Bourbon dynasty, Henry IV. All right, he's the one who issues the Edict of Nantes. All right, the Edict of Nantes is an edict of religious toleration. Okay, if you don't know what that is, you need to look that up. All right, it restored the crown's treasury. He supported trade and industry, and he gained the support of the common people. So Henry IV was actually a pretty effective monarch. Not too bad, all right? Edict of Nantes declared religious toleration, issued by Henry IV, gave Protestants the right to worship, because at this point, France is still Catholic. This is going to be very, very important as we march into the French Revolution, which is, I don't know, like 100 years from this point. But it granted Protestants the right to worship. That's very important. It was a religious compromise. Okay, so you want to remember that. Edict of Nantes, Declaration of Religious Toleration, Henry IV. It changed the focus from this religious fighting to actually rebuilding the country. Okay, Louis XIII, he assumed the throne as a child. So like Edward VI, he was a boy king. The government was run by his mother until 1617, but he had both physical and mental problems. Gee, with all the intermarriage, I wonder why that was. So Cardinal, I can never pronounce this guy's name. I don't know what it is. Like, I have a master's degree, I have a bachelor's in history. I don't know, can't pronounce this guy's name. I'm just going to go with Richelieu. I don't know. Maybe you guys can do better. He served as minister to the crown, and he had all the real power. He created intendants, and he established the French Academy. So this guy, as minister, kind of functions similar to, if you recall us talking about Edward VI, he had a regency government, and there were 2 dukes who ruled in his name, and Edward really had no say. Same deal, except it's not 2 guys, it's 1 guy, and it's this cardinal dude. So he's the one who's really controlling everything. All right, so intendants, what were they? Well, they were proposed by Cardinal Bulabaka. Local administrators, what these people were local administrators who represented the crown, right? They came from the middle class, but the king had the power to appoint and remove. So this weakened the power of nobility because you were giving it to the common people, and the common people were in hock to the king, right? So their loyalty was going to be to the king, or at least whoever was acting on his behalf, not to the nobility. So this is further evidence of absolutist tendencies, because you're consolidating power around the monarch. Their Huguenot policy was the following. They attacked Huguenot-controlled seaports, but they did allow them to practice, because they didn't want them to have economic or political power, but they didn't want to completely annihilate them either. All right, French Academy. Let me bring my camera here right back down. Okay, so this was also established by the cardinal. It set fixed rules for the French language. This now, French becomes the preferred language of European diplomacy. So if you were to read a lot of the works of the Enlightenment and other important primary sources of this time, they're in French. Even if it's coming from the Holy Roman Empire, if it's coming from, they're in French, because French was the diplomatic language. This elevated France on the international scale. So this was very, very important. This was an important movement for France. Louis XIV, the Sun King, the king for whom absolutism is really absolute. He became the source of all political authority in France. No one was above him in terms of authority. He built Versailles, which bankrupted the heck out of the French treasury, but whatever. This did become the center of European politics. Okay, he exempted nobles from most taxes, which accounts for the lack of money in the treasury. And by doing this, he gained their loyalty, but he also reduced their power. So without even realizing it at first, they willingly gave up their power, and now they're dependent upon the king for what they need. He also revoked the Edict of Nantes and said, no, no, no. All right, he came to power as a child as well. Let me pop this up here. But this other cardinal, Mazarin, and his mother effectively ran the government until 1661, and he took power. The Fronde was a particularly influential time for Louis. He actually didn't spend much time in Paris. He hated Paris, and it was because of the Fronde. So it was an unsuccessful revolt of nobles in Paris for a few years, about 5 years, 1648 to 53. Royal family was driven out of Paris twice, and they were under house arrest during part of this as well. So Louis has PTSD from this moment. Like, he's like totally freaked out. He's traumatized by the whole thing. So he didn't like Paris. This is why he built Versailles, or one of the key reasons that he did it, because it was just outside of Paris. So close enough that the people who need to be with him but are in and about Paris can get to him, but he's not actually in Paris. So he was a patron of the arts, which is really, really important. He really advanced artistic endeavor within French society. He established the elaborate system of patronage, and he effectively used mercantilism and transformed this into an ability to build armies and fight wars. Okay, he loved war. More than 50% of his reign, France was at war. He loved war, even more than Henry VIII, I think. This guy was like all about war. Now we're moving to the Colbert period. Colbert was a finance minister under Louis XIV. Okay, his central principle was that wealth and economy should serve the state. Okay, that should be its purpose. So French industry should produce everything that France needed. Okay, because remember, we're still operating under a mercantilist perspective, so you don't want to import. You want to make whatever you can yourself and sell as much as you can of your stuff, make other countries buy your expensive manufactured goods. He supported old industry, but he also created new ones. He removed all domestic tariffs and added foreign tariffs, which, if you know anything about economics, you know that tariffs are bad. Tariffs are bad. They're never good. They're an economic disaster. But they didn't know that then. Poor dears. Bless their hearts. So he supported colonization of the New World and claimed territory in Canada and the U.S., much of the territory that we now refer to as Louisiana, and what will become the Louisiana Purchase that the United States will buy from Napoleon in 1803. That's the area of Louisiana we're talking about. All right, that is the end of part 2. I will see you guys in part 3. I hope you learned what you needed to.